Thanks for staying with us. Now we're continuing with our discussion on Eskom. Earlier on, we spoke about the parastatal's inability to keep the lights on. I'm now joined by political analyst Ibrahim Harvey to unpack the wildcat strike and why it's badly timed. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Harvey. We do appreciate it. I want to start off with the first paragraph of one of your columns where you say, I've written over a dozen columns and articles in this and other publications on the chronic, painful, disruptive crisis at Eskom since 2018. And I agree with you because we've had panel discussion after panel discussion about Eskom and the inability to keep our lights on. This situation now seems as though it's far worse than it's ever been. We have been subjected to stage 6 day after day. Your views?
Yeah, as I've indicated in the column, I think it's probably the worst labor relations crisis in any of the SOEs, and for it to happen in the most crisis-ridden SOE at the moment, Eskom, which, escalated load shedding to 6, never happened since 2019. We're sitting with a very big crisis at Eskom, but I think, it just feeds into and is derived from this huge crisis that this country is afflicted with on every front, everywhere. Things are just bad. But I don't think, that the union handled this wildcat strike very well, which is what, in fact, prompted that article, But I'm happy to see that at least there's been some progress on Friday, though the intimidation and the wildcat strike still continued, and a whole lot of the acts of violence, they reached a wage agreement, which they must take to the offer from Eskom of 7%, but across the board, whereas in fact Eskom wanted to stagger it. NUM and NUMSA won the day, so if the members agree with it, they'll have a 7% increase across the board and not staggered according to, scales and levels of employment and so on.
I want to speak about the fact that you mentioned that this was almost inevitable because we've seen in 2018, we've seen in 2019 where there was a deadlock between Eskom and unions. And what was interesting is that I've just spoken to COSATU's Matthew Parks, and he says workers should not be the ones that take responsibility or suffer because of the bad decisions of Eskom's management, the board, and government as a whole. Do you think that workers have a right to say we demand more and we deserve more? Or do you think that it should be a little bit more a leveled approach, because we do know that this strike is unlawful and unprocedural?
Well, one has to go beyond what the legislation says, and really, I mentioned it's unprocedural, unlawful, etc., but all that, doesn't help you very much, because you have to realize that these workers only received a unilateral 1.5% increase that Eskom imposed last year. There wasn't a consummation of the wage negotiation. So they've got that legacy of 1.5% of last year, and probably that's why they've been so fastidious about wanting a decent increase. I think, the inflation 5.9%, I think it's fine, for a 7%. Eskom's also got serious problems. Almost 400 billion rand debt, a lot of problems. So, I think that, but the union needs to get their act together quite very seriously. One has to say, as much as I come from the trade unions myself, how NUMSA and NUM handled this wildcat strike was really a serious problem, Here you have the rank and file going on a spontaneous wildcat strike, the leadership saying, no, we don't support the strike. They're trying to get them back to work. Workers are defying the leadership. They're doing what they want to. Even by Friday, when the wage negotiations resumed, they were still busy with the wildcat strike, basically saying to hell with you and to hell with the law. It's a serious problem, and I think the union leadership, you're not worthy of the name of leadership if you're allowing a rank and file and your members to run amok and to ignore you and to ignore the law and not care a damn about anything. Now, I think those workers, as militant as they are and as justified as their wage demands are, They need to have a serious rethink and relook at their conduct. It's unbecoming and it's not going to help their struggles one bit.
You know, Mr. Harvey, I can see so much passion and anger when you explain to me how this is not okay. And I feel I connect with you on that level, because the level of anxiety as a woman in this country, I feel when there's load shedding, driving home, being at home, because we know that crime increases. And we've heard City Power here in Johannesburg saying when that load shedding schedule goes out, it's also a schedule for criminals to break in, to steal cables. It just makes everything far worse. I want to end off by asking you whether or not you think things are going to get worse. And I hope you say, no, it will get better. But just looking at the situation, looking at where we are, we've seen the CEO of Eskom saying things are going to get worse. Even if we meet an agreement and reach an agreement with unions and workers, maintenance is not happening because of what's going on. And it just seems as though it's going to get worse. Your views?
Yes, no. If you read Andrew Levy and other labor analysts, you know, people who've responded to this, they've pointed out realistically that even if you have a wage settlement and even if the members agree with this offer from Eskom, that is not going to resolve it. There's very serious, historically derived, I must tell you, you know, I don't care really how much people may criticize me. I think the Rater and the CEO also, I think they are doing the best possible job, and really in relation to previous CEOs and what has happened, they're trying to stem the tide of corruption. And I don't think it's in the interest of many people who are condemning his leadership, calling for a change. Probably many of them benefited, you know, from this massive corruption that was going on at Eskom over many years, which they have tried to stem the tide of, you know. I gather that largely, honestly, you know, he inherited a total mess at Eskom later. Total mess. I mean, you're talking over a decade of corruption, wanton fraud, mismanagement. How can you expect somebody, no matter how bright and sharp and experienced, to resolve things so quickly? I think they are on course. I support their leadership. I'll tell you very clearly. And I do not agree with those who are calling for his resignation. I think he needs to hang in there. And I think those people have an agenda who want to get rid of him and probably hope that, you know, someone else can take over and have their acts of corruption and mismanagement resuming.
I mean, he's...
But serious problems at Eskom, you know, and I don't know. I don't think this wage settlement is going to resolve it, because the current leadership is dealing with a historical situation of neglect, of lack of maintenance, and also the strike never helped anything. As the Rater has said, it has now created serious maintenance backlogs now. So what the strike's impact has done is that the likelihood of a resumption of load shedding is great, even if there's a wage settlement, you know. Eskom in the electricity industry is long-term. You can see it by its nature. When you do something wrong now and things go, it has an impact, but down the line. Certainly. And that is why see all the problems the current leadership is sitting with, because of what has happened at Eskom over the past decade.
Yes, certainly.
People want to recognize and take into account. And often, I think, unwittingly or wittingly playing the race factor, that the Rater is white and the CEO is white. They need to go, and, you know, even the Black Business Forum and Council is calling for that. I don't buy it at all. I think they're doing a good job. Hang in there and do all they can to stem this tide of corruption. You know, Eskom and Transnet are the two biggest corruption-prone SOEs. Okay. I think Eskom's on top of Transnet. And really, this is a big battle here. I support them.
Certainly.
And I think the union needs to take serious cognizance of what has happened, the divisions between the leadership and the rank and file. It's untenable.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. I mean, I wish you could go on more and more, but unfortunately we have run out of time, and I feel the passion when it comes to Eskom sorting itself out. And it's not always the leadership that's at fault here, or the management there, as you heard Dr. Ibrahim Harvey indicating that it's an issue of past corruption and mismanagement. We thank you so much for your time. We do